Hello, and welcome to the Institute of Applied Reality. I am your instructor, Earnest Twidt, and this is Finite Omnology 101. Our third lesson is about probably the most famous person that has ever existed, Jesus Christ.
Excuse me?
Yes?
Is finite omnology always about religion?
Well, omnology is the study of everything, and religion is a part of everything.
But you talk about it a lot.
I guess you're right. But here's the thing. Jesus provides an excellent example of a very human phenomenon. Over centuries, deposit upon deposit upon deposit has left a core understanding, virtually unknown, which has perverted the way we perceive reality. Finite omnology provides some serious archaeology in order to uncover the truth.
Archaeology? Are we going to dig up Jesus?
No. Jesus is as much an idea as he was an actual person. What I'm getting at is of the 2.6 billion Christians on this planet, there are approximately 45,000 different denominations. That means they all believe in Jesus in some way or another, but they're not in agreement with what he said and what he meant and what he did, and if he's the Son of God or God incarnate or both. And this isn't even including the myriad ways that individuals understand Jesus. I'm thinking with a little finite omnology and a little elbow grease, we might shed some new light on Jesus' teaching and get them to shine in some interesting ways.
Elbow grease?
It's an expression that, never mind. Most of what we know of Jesus is found in the New Testament of the Bible, where parts of his life are described in the four Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. It is widely accepted that these Gospels were all written decades after Jesus had been crucified, and the writers probably didn't witness the events described. Stories were passed down orally and finally committed to the written word. There are other Gospels, but these four are certified by the early church as possessing the essence of Jesus' actions and his teachings. The Gospel of John has a singular perspective on Jesus, and I'm going to primarily stick with the synoptic Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, which tell similar stories, and through them you get a good idea of how Jesus moved in the world. For a man who never conquered any lands, who was not a renowned artist, never wrote anything that was preserved over time, made no scientific or theoretical discoveries, wasn't a man of wealth, wasn't noble born, possessed no real power, and commanded no number of people. The fact that Jesus holds the place in history that he does, nearly 2,000 years after his death, is remarkable. Reading the Gospels, Jesus comes across as a charismatic character, able to attract a variety of individuals to him that become quite devout, though he seemed very wary of crowds. He was very caring and empathetic, miraculously healing people of their physical ailments and always defending and supporting widows and children, the most marginalized in the society. He had no problem with the unclean, or those who didn't follow the Jewish God, or people from foreign lands, which was unlike most Jews at that time. Jesus went to synagogues and taught and had a deep understanding of the Hebrew Bible. He was thoughtful and collected, a strict pacifist. You could say rather Zen-like, only lashing out once in the Gospels at people defiling the temple in Jerusalem. Oh, he also casts out lots of demons. Since there isn't any historical record outside of the Bible that describes a rash of supernatural monsters plaguing the Middle East, I'm thinking that the demons described were actually manifestations of an overwhelmed will, like the ones I described in the previous lesson. The Roman Empire controlled their land. They were at the mercy of laws they didn't create, but were imposed upon them by a conquering army, with a different way of looking at the world. They were very heavily taxed, with the bulk of the proceeds going directly to Rome. Additionally, their religious leaders, the Sadducees and the Pharisees, were constantly coming down on them because of their sinful nature. In all aspects of their life, politically, spiritually, economically, the people were at the mercy of others, and they were drowning in futility. Jesus talked a lot about the kingdom of God, a place where the meek ruled, where the first are last and the last are first, a place of peace and harmony. This place goes by another name, heaven, which is where we're taught the worthy go after they die. Now, whether it was the miracles or his demeanor or his mere presence, people listened to when Jesus talked, and these disillusioned, downtrodden people found great hope and inspiration in his words. And what were these words? Well, besides a few commandments like do unto others as you would have others do unto you, and love each other as I have loved you, most of his lessons came in the form of parables or stories. The thing I particularly love about parables is that they contain more information than a simple command. Even something straightforward like thou shalt not kill doesn't really explain why it is that we shouldn't be doing the killing. And we're able to make all sorts of exceptions, which actually makes killing a good thing. In a parable, we get more context, and oftentimes evokes an emotional connection to better convey what Jesus was getting at. My favorite parable is the prodigal son. It's a story about a father and his two sons. The younger son asks his father to give him his inheritance early, and the loving father grants his wish and divides his estate into two and gives his younger son the proceeds. The younger one runs off to another country and blows his inheritance on wine, women, and song, having a good old time until the money ran out and he found himself destitute in a land suffering from famine. He gets work as a swineherd, feeding pigs these pods and envying the pigs that they get to eat these pods, and realizes that if he went back home and begged forgiveness from his father, he could work as his slave and eat because his father treats his slaves well. The younger son journeys back home, and before he even reaches the door, his father sees him and runs out to him, and there is a wonderful reunion, and the son begs forgiveness, and the father is joyous, and it's all wonderful. The father calls for his servants to get his son robes and rings and tells them to kill the fatted calf in celebration of his son's return. Now, the older son, who's been working, comes home and wonders what all the commotion is about and learns of his brother's return. This doesn't really spark joy in the dutiful son, who goes to his father and asks, "What's all this then? I've done everything right and there's never been a celebration for me." His father answers, "Son, you are always with me. All that is mine is yours. Your brother was essentially dead, and now he is alive, and we should rejoice." Isn't that lovely? Oh, most people interpret this as God the Father will always embrace your return to him, no matter what debauchery you've committed. His love is endless, and forgiveness is just a choice away. But what of that other brother? I guess he's just got to suck it up, Buttercup, and find joy where he can. But that's not right, is it? If you think about it, all the gifts given to the younger brother upon his return actually belonged to the older brother, as the estate was divided. The older brother is actually doing his father a favor, letting him stay in his property, and the father has to know that on some level. Once the reverie of the return dies down, he's got to realize that he's mistreating his obedient son. And what of that younger brother? He's got to know he really put it to his older brother, and that although he received forgiveness from the father, isn't he indebted to his brother as well? Everyone is pretty much screwed in this scenario, on some level, and that's not even getting into the slaves. So, what's the story about then? I believe Jesus was describing a broken system, that no matter who you identify with, either father, eldest son, prodigal son, you always end up lacking. The beautiful image of the joyful reunion is inexorably tainted by the system of possessions, which rob us of our joy, because we're constantly focused on what people owe us and what we owe other people. This idea is met out in a myriad of stories that Jesus tells, other parables, answers to questions, an overall expression of ideas found in the gospel. The only problem is heaven has gotten in the way.
Excuse me? What does heaven have to do with it?
Well, whether you want to believe it or not, life seems to be about a series of goals. How we go about achieving those goals oftentimes determines our character. It's the whole ends justifying the means thing, where, how we get there is oftentimes more important than getting there. Heaven is presented as the end of all ends, paradise, where we will live in eternity in utter bliss. All we need to do to achieve that is believing in Jesus, and all the pain and misery and sorrow of this current existence falls away after we're dead. That's a pretty good pitch, but I have a hard time believing that's what was intended.
Are you saying heaven is a scam?
Not exactly, but I must say finite omnology firmly rejects this idea of heaven because there are no provable elements. Look at it this way. We are here. We want to get there. We don't really make any effort to get there. We just believe in Jesus. And when we die, boop, we just magically appear there. Boop. I don't get it.
That's because it's a matter of faith.
Indeed. Oh, it's pure faith. Oh, faith is very important, undoubtedly. Jesus talked a lot about faith. But here's a little story that I think about often. A good man comes to Jesus and asks, "How do I enter the kingdom of God?" Jesus responds, "Follow the commandments." The man says, "I do." Then Jesus says, "Sell all your possessions and give the proceeds to the poor, and then come follow me." The man walks away dejected, as if Jesus was trolling him. You know, I think it might be better to look at Jesus' teachings not as a spiritual matter, but as a matter of economics.
What is economics?
I see economics as the science of needs and desires and the interaction of people that lead to measurable outcomes in the livelihoods of individuals, groups, or even countries. It often involves topics like wealth and finance, but it's not just about money. It's about resources and scarcity, how people respond to change, even decision-making and setting priorities.
So what does that have to do with Jesus?
Asking the man to give away all his money to the poor basically puts the man at the mercy of God. He's put all his faith in God to feed him, to house him, to make sure he's okay, which seems a little obtuse. But you know, if you play the scenario out a little further, something remarkable happens. So, you've given all your money away, and now you're poor. But then, someone wealthy comes along and gives you their wealth, which will make you rich again. So you would take what you needed and pass the rest on. And this cycle would continue on and on and on, rich giving to poor, until all the resources were distributed pretty evenly. Keep in mind, we're all still working away like we do, taking the resources we require and using them to generate more and different resources that would then be distributed around, eventually creating a system where we all are dependent on the other for our sustenance and well-being. Two amazing nuns pointed out to me that the miracle of the loaves and fishes was actually a demonstration of this very economic model. All four Gospels tell the story of Jesus taking 2 fishes and 5 loaves of bread and feeding 5,000 people with it, with abundant leftovers even after everyone had their fill. The fact of the matter was that everyone was sharing with everyone else, and everyone was fed, and there was more than enough to go around.
Is sharing really an economic model?
Well, this is how many tribes existed for centuries, everyone contributing to the greater good, working together to identify what was needed and then endeavoring to provide what was required. Doing jobs that you had interest in, that you would gain expertise, that you would then train others to do after you. Always seeking to enrich the lives of yourself and those around you. Everyone was taking care of everyone else to the best of everyone's ability. Everyone had a purpose. Everyone contributing to everyone else.
But is it fair?
Eek! Yeah, that is the issue, isn't it? What happens when you think others aren't working as hard as you? Or if others are consuming far more than you think they should? Or if your skills are rare and some other guy's having an easier time of it? You're up late at night toiling away on the cure for cancer, and some other guy who does trash removal is sleeping soundly. Doesn't sound like would ever be fair. But I guess it's where you place fairness on your list of priorities, isn't it? Fairness is a rather tricky construct with many considerations. I suspect the man shoveling human excrement feels he isn't properly compensated, but it is a job any healthy person could do. It's an important job, dealing with a hazardous substance, so the rest of us are safe, but not a job requiring a lot of study. It's a job that demands constant attention and immediate action. It's not a prestigious job, actually one that you may be ashamed of, but if we let the excrement pile up, the rest of us wouldn't be able to achieve what we achieve. But somehow we find it fair that he is poorly compensated comparatively. Consider this. You were blessed with a big brain. Should that also mean you have a nicer house and better food? You were luckily in the right place at the right time, happened to be born with wealthy parents, through no doing of your own, lived in an area with good schools, freakily met the right person, possessed no morals, and were willing to take advantage of others. These are actual factors in determining our compensation. Maybe fairness shouldn't be a significant concern. Maybe respecting what each of us do for each other needs greater importance. Maybe determining our value relative to each other is toxic, and your connection to a greater whole matters more. You know, Jesus knew this was a huge issue. He knew that human competitiveness was deep within us, and to essentially renounce that part of us to follow a unique path required a significant choice. You couldn't be forced into cooperating because the amount of resentment it would generate would destroy everything. No, you had to knowingly want it. This was a true act of faith. Beyond simply believing in something beyond our comprehension, this was actually trusting Jesus' societal model. You were placing your life into your neighbor's hands, and they were placing their life into your hands. Absolutely terrifying. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Socialism, 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 socialism. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Socialism alert. Seems I'm getting some incredulousness out there. No, this is not some socialist reading of the Bible. No, I direct you to the Acts of the Apostles, the chronicle of what the apostles did after Jesus died. One of the first things they do is renounce their possessions and create a community where the people share everything. Peter, their leader, is kind of zealous and militant in administering to the community, and they suggest he focus more on evangelizing to appeal for more people to join them. They create a group to better run the community, of which Stephen is one in charge. The community does so well that eventually the religious leaders grow jealous and accuse Stephen of blasphemy and is stoned to death, and the community goes into hiding. Interestingly, Saul, who became Paul, was instrumental in persecuting the community. He had a conversion experience, and the rest of the Acts of the Apostles is mostly about him. It's almost as if the initial focus of the followers to create a possessionless community is forgotten, and creating churches becomes primary. Nearly 2,000 years have passed since Jesus died, and I can't help but believe that we expected him to do all the heavy lifting. I prefer to believe that Jesus provided the blueprints for the kingdom of God, and we were supposed to build it. Jesus sent out disciples to spread his message, to gain adherents, builders. That if enough people followed this economic path, the results could be incredible. Have you ever thought about how much of your life is spent dealing with money? Yes, money is food and shelter and clothing and everything else, but it is an abstraction of those things. Have you thought about the energy tied up with money? How many industries are built up around money? It's acquisition, it's protection, it's movement, it's consolidation, it's dispersal, thinking about money, writing about money, talking about money, fighting over money, bargaining, haggling, selling, advertising, offering, setting prices, changing prices, investing, taxes, loans, mortgages, inflation, bankruptcies, defaults, charges, credits, budgets, accounting, bookkeeping, payroll, insurance, markets, stocks, bonds, retirement funds, pensions, IRAs, Social Security, Medicare, wages, the gold standard, fiat currency, the elite, the dollar, the yen, the euro, the 1%, the middle class, the poor, the homeless, millionaires, billionaires, real estate, wealth, profit. The only legal responsibility of a corporation is to maximize profits, which simply is charging the right amount of money so the maximum number of people will pay for whatever, while spending the least creating whatever. That is greed. Our society is largely based on greed, and we all know it's a deadly sin, but it's all become so normalized that whatever. We fail to see the connection that most of the ills we label as a society is largely based on this fact. Beyond the obvious crimes of theft, violence over lands, hoarding resources, and generally protecting my stuff, there's the less obvious passive violence of denying those in need. Poverty is not a disease. It's an economic choice. If we chose to feed everyone, we could do that. If we chose to give everyone a place to live, we could do that. Make sure everyone is healthy, sure, why not? caring for our neighbor as we care for ourselves. Sounds familiar. Jesus' description of the kingdom of God was less of a place than it was a way of being. The means of achieving the kingdom of God is by trying to create heaven on earth.
But what if someone comes with weapons and tries to take it away from you?
This is a huge topic which I will discuss in a future lesson. But we'll get there. For now, understand that living this economic model and inspiring others to live this way as well could fundamentally change the way we all think. Maybe we could grow to the place where we celebrate our neighbor's successes more than our own.
Makes me happy when me and my best friend Mary get together.
Jesus said, "Whoever does not receive the kingdom of God like a child will not enter it at all."
And we beat up on our dads. It's really fun.
I used to believe that Jesus' affinity for children was based on innocence. This magical time of life when trust is great and your heart is open. I see it much more practically now. Children don't know what isn't possible, and they haven't bought in to the world the way it is. They aren't invested in a way of thinking with certain expectations and demands.
I thought it was because kids rule.
You may be absolutely right about that. Is that going to be on the test?
Only if you want it to be.
Be well, everyone. Feel free to leave comments, suggestions, and questions. Until next time, thank you.